In the glittering palaces of Rome, behind silk curtains, a forbidden world of cruelty and shattered innocence unfolded in silence. You stand before the Palatine Hill, where marble gleams like bone in the Mediterranean sun. The year is 98 AD, and Emperor Trajan's empire stretches from Britain's mists to Egypt's burning sands. But turn away from the monuments, the golden eagles, the cheering crowds in the Circus Maximus. What you're about to witness isn't carved in stone or celebrated in epic poems. It's written in flesh, whispered in corridors where no historian dared to tread. Behind these towering walls of imperial grandeur, where purple-clad senators debate the fate of nations, another kind of power game unfolds. Here, in chambers scented with Arabian incense and draped in silk stolen from distant kingdoms, the empire's darkest appetites feast on something more precious than gold: innocence itself. Picture the scene that greets you as servant doors swing open. Endless halls stretch before you, their floors inlaid with precious stones that spell out the names of conquered peoples. Frescoes depict triumphant battles, but look closer. See the chains around captive children's wrists, the knowing smiles on Roman faces as they survey their human prizes. This isn't mere decoration, it's a catalogue of conquest, and you're about to discover what happens to those small figures painted in the margins of history. The air thrums with power here, thick as honey and twice as suffocating. You hear the rustle of silk, the soft pad of bare feet on cold marble, the distant sound of a lyre played by trembling fingers. But beneath it all, if you listen carefully, you can hear something else: the absence of deeper voices, the missing notes that should resonate through these halls, but never will. Emperor Domitian emerges from shadows cast by towering columns, his face a mask of divine authority carved from living flesh. In his wake trail figures that make you pause, your breath catching in your throat. They move with ethereal grace, these pale servants whose beauty seems almost supernatural. Their robes shimmer like starlight, their features delicate as painted porcelain. But their eyes hold depths of sorrow that no amount of imperial finery can disguise. You're witnessing the empire's most carefully guarded secret, the systematic destruction of boyhood itself, performed not in dungeons or battlefields, but in perfumed chambers, where cruelty masquerades as refinement. These are the castrati of Rome, living symbols of absolute power's ability to reshape not just nations, but the very essence of human identity. The practice didn't emerge from mere sadism, though sadism certainly fed its continuation. No, this horror grew from something more calculated, more chilling in its systematic nature. Roman law, that foundation of civilization we still study today, contained within its bronze tablets the legal framework for transforming freeborn children into living property. The 12 Tables spoke of paternal authority, but they said nothing about the limits of that authority when exercised by divine emperors who considered themselves gods walking among mortals. Watch as Domitian's fingers trace the air, a gesture that sends servants scurrying to fulfill unspoken commands. This is power in its purest, most terrifying form, the ability to unmake human nature itself and remake it according to imperial whim. The boys you see serving wine with downcast eyes, their movements choreographed to perfection, represent something more disturbing than slavery. Slaves might dream of freedom, might retain the fierce core of their original selves. These castrated servants have had that core surgically removed, their very capacity for rebellion carved away before their voices could deepen into defiance. Historical records, when they dare mention such practices at all, speak in euphemisms. Suetonius writes of special servants in his Lives of the Caesars. Tacitus mentions those made smooth for imperial pleasure in passing, as if discussing the weather. But you're here to witness what their careful language conceals: the empire's hunger for absolute control over its most vulnerable subjects. The transformation begins before dawn in chambers you'll never see described in official histories. While Rome sleeps, while senators dream of glory and merchants count their profits, skilled hands perform procedures that strip away more than flesh. They remove possibility itself, the possibility of fatherhood, of deep-voiced authority, of standing as equals among men. What emerges from these sessions isn't human in any sense the Romans understood masculinity. These are creatures of a third category, neither male nor female, belonging fully to neither world, but trapped forever in the space between. You feel the weight of their tragedy as they glide past, carrying golden platters laden with delicacies from across the empire. Each movement speaks of careful training, of lessons learned through methods that would make hardened legionnaires weep. Their beauty is artificial, cultivated like exotic flowers in imperial gardens, and like those flowers, it serves only to please those with power to demand such pleasures. Emperor Trajan's correspondence with Pliny mentions the necessity of proper servants for delicate matters of state. Hadrian's personal writings, discovered centuries later in villa ruins, contain detailed instructions for maintaining appropriate household staff. These aren't mere administrative notes, they're blueprints for systematic dehumanization, dressed in the language of efficient governance. The empire's appetite for such servants spread like plague through its territories. Provincial governors, eager to curry favor with Rome, began sending their gifts to the capital, children carefully selected for beauty, intelligence, and that indefinable quality that made their destruction particularly precious to imperial tastes. What had begun as occasional cruelty evolved into institutional horror, a machine that consumed childhood and produced perfect, hollow servitude. As torches flicker in their bronze holders, casting dancing shadows on frescoed walls, you realize you're standing at the intersection of absolute power and absolute vulnerability. This isn't a story of ancient barbarism safely contained in history books. It's a meditation on what happens when human dignity becomes negotiable, when power recognizes no limits except its own expanding appetite. The boys serving tonight's imperial banquet carry within their altered bodies the seeds of questions that echo through every age. What happens when civilization's highest achievements coexist with its deepest cruelties? When does the pursuit of beauty become the destruction of humanity itself? Tomorrow, senators will praise Rome's glory in marble forums, but tonight, in chambers where silk cannot muffle the echo of stolen childhoods, you witness the empire's truest legacy. The shadows here have voices, if you know how to listen. They were taken before their voices changed, their childhood stolen forever, condemned to serve an empire that devoured innocence whole. You witness the moment when fate severs a child's life into before and after. The marketplace in Antioch buzzes with commerce. Spices from India perfume the air, while Syrian merchants haggle over purple dye worth more than most men earn in lifetimes. But your attention fixes on a corner where different transactions unfold, where human flesh changes hands with the casual efficiency of grain sales. Marcus, barely 10 years old, stands chained beside his weeping mother. Parthian raiders swept through their village 3 months ago, and now Roman slave dealers examine him like livestock. His dark eyes dart between faces that study his smooth cheeks, his unblemished skin, his small hands that have never known calluses from adult labor. The dealer's fingers probe his throat, checking for the telltale roughness that signals approaching manhood. Finding none, the man nods with satisfaction. "This one has quality," the dealer announces to his Roman client, a perfumed official whose purple-striped toga marks him as someone with access to imperial circles. Still young enough for proper preparation. The procedure works best before nature takes its course. You feel the child's confusion radiating like heat from sun-baked stones. Marcus doesn't understand the clinical terms, the euphemistic language that masks horror behind administrative precision. He knows only that separation looms, from his mother's protective embrace, from everything familiar, from the future he assumed would unfold naturally as seasons change. The Roman examines other children with practiced efficiency. His trained eye seeks specific qualities, beauty that will mature into something ethereal, intelligence that can be shaped into perfect obedience, and that indefinable arche that makes its extinguishing particularly satisfying to imperial tastes. These aren't random selections. Each child represents careful calculation, investment in future returns, measured not in gold, but in the currency of absolute control. Watch as coins change hands, not the copper pieces used for bread or wine, but gold ore bearing Trajan's profile. A single child's price could feed a plebeian family for years, yet these transactions occur with mundane regularity. The empire's appetite for such servants has created an entire economy built on harvesting innocence before it can ripen into rebellion. The journey to Rome begins immediately. No time for farewells, no gentle transition from known to unknown. You follow as the children, shackled in pairs, stumble through streets where free citizens conduct ordinary business. A baker kneads dough for tomorrow's bread, while chained boys shuffle past his window. A mother bounces her infant son, cooing about his future strength, as Marcus passes close enough to hear her lullaby. The irony cuts deeper than any blade. Life continues its normal rhythms, while childhood itself gets systematically harvested for imperial consumption. Inside the slave ship's hold, darkness swallows everything except the soft sounds of weeping and whispered prayers in languages that span the empire's breadth. Germanic boys with hair like spun gold huddle beside dark-skinned children from Nubia. Gallic youth with eyes blue as winter skies share chains with olive-skinned captives from Asia Minor. Rome's reach extends into every corner of the known world, and from each corner it extracts the same tribute. Children too young to resist, too beautiful to ignore, too innocent to comprehend their fate. The ship's physician makes his rounds, checking each child with clinical detachment. His bag contains instruments that gleam like silver nightmares. Curved knives, bronze clamps, twisted wire for binding arteries, but also gentler tools, poppy extract for pain, silk bandages, healing, ointments. Even in cruelty, Rome maintains its standards of efficiency. Damaged goods serve no purpose. The empire requires its victims to survive their transformation intact enough to function perfectly in their new roles. You observe the careful preparation that begins aboard ship. The children receive better food than common slaves: honey cakes, fresh fruit, wine mixed with herbs that promote healing. Their hair gets washed with imported oils, their skin treated with lotions that will preserve its youthful softness through the coming ordeal. It's a grotesque parody of care, tenderness deployed not for the children's benefit, but to ensure they remain suitable raw material for imperial craftsmanship. Veteran slave handlers share knowledge passed down through generations of human trafficking. They speak of optimal timing: too young, and the child may not survive the procedure; too old, and the physical changes prove irreversible. They discuss techniques developed through trial and error, methods refined through countless repetitions until systematic mutilation achieves the precision of art. The Egyptians perfected the bronze tools, one handler explains to his apprentice, unaware that small ears listen from nearby shadows. But Roman steel cuts cleaner, less infection, faster healing. The emperor's household demands perfection: no scars that show, no complications that interfere with functionality. As the ship approaches Ostia, Rome's bustling port, you witness the children's first glimpse of their destination. The Palatine Hill rises in the distance, its marble temples catching sunlight like captured stars. To free eyes, it represents civilization's pinnacle. To these chained children, it looms as the site of their coming destruction, beautiful and terrible as a god's cruel smile. The final preparation occurs in holding facilities near the port. Here, skilled ironers, men whose names history mercifully forgot, perform procedures that transform biology itself. The screams that echo from these chambers never reach official records. No historian chronicles the moment when a child's voice rises to impossible pitch before falling silent forever. No poet captures the exact second when boyhood dies under Roman steel. But you witness what survives these sessions: pale figures that emerge walking carefully, their movements constrained by bandages and internal damage that will never fully heal. Their eyes hold new knowledge now: understanding of their own powerlessness, recognition that their bodies no longer belong to them, acceptance that their futures have been surgically limited to serving others' pleasures. The empire has claimed them completely, not just their labor or their loyalty, but their very capacity for becoming men. What walks from those chambers isn't human in any sense that Marcus's village would recognize. These are Rome's newest creations, living symbols of power's ability to reshape flesh according to imperial desire. Yet something persists in their altered forms, some essential spark that no blade can reach, no procedure can eliminate. It flickers in their eyes when they think themselves unobserved, burns quietly in hearts that continue beating despite everything inflicted upon them. This residual humanity becomes both their greatest vulnerability and their only hope for meaning in the hollow years ahead. Tonight, as new arrivals recover from their transformation, veteran servants tend their wounds with practiced gentleness. They speak in whispers of survival techniques, of finding purpose within purposelessness, of maintaining dignity when dignity itself has been carved away. It's a harsh apprenticeship in living as fragments of former selves. The Empire has taken everything it can reach with bronze and steel. What remains will determine whether these children become perfect servants or something else entirely, something Rome never intended to create but cannot prevent. Witnesses to its own monstrous appetite, living testimonies to civilization's capacity for consuming its own young. In the morning, they will enter the palace proper, beginning lives that exist solely to serve imperial pleasure. But first, they must learn to walk as strangers in their own transformed flesh. Dragged from filthy slave markets into shimmering palaces, the boys soon discovered that gilded walls concealed an empire's darkest hungers. You follow Marcus as he stumbles through bronze gates that tower 3 times his height, their surfaces carved with scenes of Roman triumph over barbarian hordes. The irony isn't lost. He himself represents another kind of conquest, more intimate and permanent than any battlefield victory. His bare feet, still tender from the ship's rough planking, meet polished marble so smooth it reflects his pale face like a mirror showing unwelcome truths. The transition strikes like physical blow. One moment he breathed the stench of unwashed bodies and human waste that permeates holding pens near Ostia's docks. Now perfumed air fills his lungs, frankincense from Arabia, rose oil from Damascus, sandalwood from distant India. The sweetness makes him dizzy, or perhaps that's from blood loss, from wounds that throb with each heartbeat, reminding him of what was taken in those screaming hours he tries desperately to forget. Palace corridors stretch endlessly in every direction, their walls adorned with frescoes depicting gods at play and mortals at worship. Apollo's painted eyes seem to track Marcus's movement, and he wonders if divine beings witness his degradation or if even immortals avert their gaze from such systematic cruelty. The ceiling soars overhead, painted blue as summer sky and dotted with golden stars, creating illusion of infinite space where none exists for him. "Walk straight," hisses the overseer, a man whose own altered voice carries authority learned through years of managing imperial property. "Keep your eyes down. Speak only when commanded. The emperor values silence above all virtues in his special servants." You watch as Marcus struggles to obey, each step sending fresh pain through healing wounds. The silk tunic they've dressed him in feels softer than anything his peasant hands ever touched, yet it chafes against bandages like mockery of comfort. Golden anklets circle his feet, beautiful chains that mark him as valuable property, while ensuring he cannot run far if desperation overcomes training. Other figures glide through the halls like ghosts draped in expensive fabric. These veterans of palace life move with ethereal grace that speaks of years spent perfecting soundless obedience. Their faces hold painted beauty, cold eyes, rouged lips, powdered skin that glows pale as moonlight. But you recognize the careful blankness in their expressions, the deliberate absence of emotion that protects whatever remains of their inner selves from constant violation. "That one served a mission for 15 years, the overseer whispers, indicating a figure whose ageless beauty masks unknowable suffering. Now he trains newcomers in proper deportment. Learn from him. He understands what pleases imperial tastes and what brings punishment worse than death." The trainer approaches with footsteps soft as falling snow. His voice, when he speaks, carries no trace of masculine authority, only the carefully modulated tones of someone who has learned to make even breathing sound apologetic. "You are Quintus now," he tells Marcus, using the Roman name assigned to replace his barbarian origins. Your old self died in the preparation chambers. What lives now exists solely for Imperial service. You feel Marcus's confusion deepen as he's led through reception halls, where senators conduct state business mere feet from chambers dedicated to more private entertainments. The proximity isn't accidental. Rome takes pride in juxtaposing its highest achievements with its darkest appetites, as if the contrast enhances both. Here, where laws are debated that will govern millions, castrated boys arrange flowers and pour wine, their presence a constant reminder of power's unlimited reach. The first glimpse of Emperor Trajan strikes like lightning. He emerges from shadows cast by purple curtains, his presence filling the enormous atrium despite his mortal frame. Gold thread in his toga catches torchlight, making him shimmer like something divine. His eyes, gray as winter storms, sweep across the assembled servants with calculating interest. This isn't a man looking at people, it's a collector appraising additions to his gallery of human curiosities. "Fresh acquisitions from the eastern provinces," reports the chief eunuch, his voice carrying pride in efficient procurement. "All prepared according to your specifications, Caesar." The youngest shows particular promise for musical training. Trajan's gaze settles on Marcus, and you witness the moment when a child realizes he exists now as entertainment for forces beyond his comprehension. The emperor's expression holds no cruelty in any conventional sense, no sadistic pleasure or obvious malice. Instead, you see something more chilling, complete indifference to Marcus's humanity, casual assumption that flesh can be reshaped according to imperial whim without moral consequence. "Test his voice," Trajan commands, the words carrying absolute authority despite their conversational tone. "If it proves suitable, begin lyre lessons immediately. The Syrian ambassador arrives next month. I want new entertainment for the welcoming banquet." You watch as Marcus opens his mouth to produce sound, only to discover that his transformed vocal cords create tones that no longer belong to him. The voice that emerges sounds like wind through reed pipes, beautiful and haunting, but utterly severed from masculine potential. His horror at hearing himself provides visible entertainment for watching courtiers, their cultured laughter echoing through halls built to amplify imperial pleasure. The palace routine begins immediately. Dawn B. Rings lessons in deportment, how to walk without making sound, how to serve wine without spilling drops, how to arrange features and expressions of pleasant vacancy that suggest contentment with servitude. Midday involves musical instruction, learning to coax melodies from instruments whose strings vibrate with more masculine authority than his altered voice can ever claim. Evenings prove worst of all. That's when Marcus and other newcomers are displayed for imperial guests, living decorations whose beauty exists to enhance the atmosphere, while their degradation entertains sophisticated palates. Roman nobles compete to demonstrate their refinement by discussing the children's various qualities with the detached appreciation usually reserved for fine art or exceptional wine. "Notice the bone structure," observes a senator's wife, her jeweled fingers tracing the air near Marcus's face without quite touching. Clearly Germanic stock, but with that interesting darkness around the eyes. The procedure has enhanced his natural coloring beautifully. You feel revulsion rise as these discussions continue. Civilized voices analyzing surgical modifications with the clinical enthusiasm of natural philosophers studying exotic specimens. The children stand motionless throughout such examinations, their training already advanced enough to prevent visible flinching when hands explore their altered bodies with scientific curiosity. Night brings no relief. The dormitory where castrated servants sleep occupies chambers that once housed praetorian guards, another irony in an empire built on layers of cruel humor. Here, veteran eunuchs share survival wisdom with trembling newcomers, their whispered conversations creating a shadow education in endurance techniques. "Never let them see you cry," advises an older boy whose beauty has begun the inevitable fade toward obsolescence. Tears excite them. They interpret suffering as proof of their power's completeness. Show nothing, feel nothing they can recognize. Keep your real self buried so deep that even you forget where you hid it. Marcus learns to navigate between two worlds, the glittering surface where he performs assigned roles with increasing skill, and the hidden interior where fragments of his original identity struggle to survive systematic erasure. The palace provides everything his body requires while slowly starving his spirit through calculated neglect of every human need that cannot be commodified for imperial consumption. As weeks pass, you observe his transformation accelerating. The boy who once helped his father tend sheep in Parthian highlands becomes something else entirely, a perfect servant whose beauty serves imperial appetites while his suffering remains carefully invisible beneath layers of training and chemical alteration. Yet something persists in his eyes during unguarded moments, recognition that his humanity exists independent of what's been done to his flesh. The Empire may possess his body completely, but it has not yet claimed his soul. That battle continues every day in chambers where silk cannot muffle the sound of childhood dying. Whipped, molded, and stripped of humanity, boys were sculpted into obedient courtiers, living statues of silence and submission. You enter the training halls before dawn, when marble floors still hold night's chill, and torches cast dancing shadows that make the frescoed gods seem alive with cruel amusement. Here, in chambers designed for transforming flesh into art, Marcus begins his education in systematic self-erasure. The morning air carries scents of rose oil and myrrh, perfumes that will soon become as familiar as his own altered breathing. Master Gaius Aurelius, chief instructor of imperial eunuchs, moves through the assembled boys like a sculptor examining raw marble for hidden flaws. His own transformation occurred 30 years ago under Emperor Vespasian's reign, and decades of palace service have refined his understanding of what pleases imperial tastes into something approaching scientific precision. When he speaks, his voice carries the ethereal quality that marks all successful graduates of Rome's human modification program. "Observe," he commands, gesturing to a veteran servant whose movements flow like water over stones. "See how Alexios walks. No sound disturbs the air around his passage. His feet kiss marble without demanding attention. His breathing creates no disturbance in silk curtains. He exists without existing, present without presence. This is your goal, to serve so perfectly that your masters forget you possess independent life." You watch as Marcus attempts to replicate such ghostly grace, his healing wounds making each step an exercise in controlled agony. The bronze shackles around his ankles have been replaced with golden chains that look decorative but serve the same function, beautiful reminders of his permanent captivity. Each movement must be relearned, each gesture reconstructed according to principles that prioritize aesthetic appeal over natural human expression. The curriculum unfolds with methodical cruelty disguised as education. Morning sessions focus on physical deportment, how to arrange limbs in positions that suggest eternal availability for service, how to maintain expressions of pleasant vacancy even during private humiliation, how to breathe so quietly that imperial conversations proceed undisturbed by evidence of servant humanity. Every natural impulse must be suppressed, every spontaneous reaction trained into predetermined responses that serve others' comfort. "Your old self was animal," Master Gaius explains during afternoon instruction, his words delivered with the patient tone of someone explaining obvious truth to slow children. "Animals move according to impulse, speak when they feel urges, express emotion without consideration for their betters' requirements. We are creating something higher, beings who exist solely to enhance imperial pleasure through perfect anticipation of need." You witness the horror of systematic personality dissolution as Marcus learns to fragment his consciousness. The boy who once laughed at his father's jokes now practices arranging his features in expressions that suggest contentment with servitude. The child who once ran freely through mountain meadows now spends hours perfecting the art of standing motionless for entire banquets, available for service but invisible unless specifically summoned. Musical training provides another layer of transformation. The lyre becomes an extension of altered flesh, its strings vibrating with more masculine authority than Marcus's surgically modified voice can ever claim. His fingers, once skilled at guiding sheep through rocky passages, now learn to coax melodies that enhance imperial dining while his own hunger remains carefully invisible. The songs he practices speak of love and heroism, themes forever denied to one, whose capacity for both has been surgically removed. Feel the music flow through you, instructs the palace musician, a Greek whose own castration occurred in childhood under different circumstances but with identical results. Let the melody replace your heartbeat, the rhythm substitute for breathing. You are not performing music, you are becoming music, transforming yourself into living harmony that exists solely for others' pleasure. The psychological conditioning proves more brutal than physical training. Each day brings lessons in self-negation disguised as refinement. Marcus learns to anticipate needs before they are expressed, to read facial expressions and body language with supernatural accuracy, to position himself always within reach but never obviously present. His own needs, for food, rest, human contact, dignity, become irrelevant except as they might interfere with perfect service. You observe group sessions where boys practice synchronized movements, their actions choreographed to create living tableaus for Imperial entertainment. They learn to arrange themselves like human furniture, beautiful and functional but devoid of independent will. When emperors host banquets, these castrated servants will glide between guests like spirits, pouring wine and clearing plates while remaining as unnoticed as shadows cast by torchlight. The training includes darker elements whispered about, but never explicitly acknowledged. Veteran eunuchs teach newcomers how to endure private audiences with particularly creative masters, how to maintain composure during humiliations designed specifically to test the completeness of their psychological reconstruction. These lessons occur in chambers where even palace guards cannot witness what unfolds behind locked doors. Remember, advises Alexios during one such session, his ageless features betraying no emotion despite the horror of his words. Pain is temporary, but disgrace lasts forever. Whatever they do to your flesh cannot touch what you choose to preserve inside. Hide your real self so completely that even torture cannot find it. Become empty vessels that can be filled with their desires without losing the secret core that makes survival possible. You watch as Marcus develops the dissociation skills that will define his existence. He learns to separate consciousness from physical experience, to observe his own degradation with the detached interest of someone watching events unfold to a different person. This psychological splitting becomes essential survival technique, the only way to maintain sanity while systematically surrendering every aspect of human dignity. The palace provides every luxury except the ones that matter most. Golden beds offer comfort to flesh that no longer belongs to its original owner. Exotic foods nourish bodies maintained solely for others' pleasure. Silk garments display enhanced beauty while concealing surgical scars that mark permanent transformation. Yet these material comforts serve only to highlight the complete absence of anything resembling genuine care for the human beings trapped within altered flesh. Advanced students receive specialized training based on individual aptitudes discovered through months of observation and testing. Some show talent for languages, learning to serve as interpreters during diplomatic functions while their own voices carry no authority. Others demonstrate artistic abilities, their paintings and sculptures celebrating imperial glory while their own lives remain invisible to history. A few display intellectual gifts, becoming living libraries who remember vast amounts of information while possessing no right to express independent thoughts. Excellence in service requires complete self-erasure, Master Gaius repeats during final examinations, his words echoing through chambers where boys demonstrate perfect mastery of inhuman skills. You must become so thoroughly attuned to imperial desires that anticipating them becomes automatic. Your masters should never need to speak their requirements. Your transformed selves should recognize and fulfill needs before consciousness fully forms them. The graduation ceremony occurs without celebration or recognition. Boys who successfully complete their transformation simply disappear into palace routine, their previous existence erased as completely as their capacity for natural human development. They become living furniture, beautiful and functional, but forever denied the possibility of growing into anything beyond what surgical modification and psychological conditioning have created. Yet even in this systematic destruction of human potential, something persists. You catch glimpses of it during unguarded moments, flickers of original personality that survive beneath layers of imposed servitude. These fragments remain hidden, protected by dissociation techniques learned through necessity, waiting for opportunities that may never come to reassert their existence. Marcus has learned to walk without sound, serve without acknowledgement, exist without existing. But deep inside altered flesh, the shepherd boy still dreams of mountain meadows where sheep run free under open sky. The Empire owns his body completely now. His soul remains contested territory where daily battles unfold in silence. Behind jeweled masks, they served wine, danced, and smiled, while their souls withered in the shadows of imperial power. You drift through Emperor Trajan's palace as evening falls, watching torchlight transform marble corridors into rivers of gold. The air shimmers with incense burning in bronze braziers, cedar from Lebanon, myrrh from Arabia Felix, frankincense from the distant shores of India. Yet beneath these exotic perfumes lurks something else, the scent of fear, carefully masked but never entirely absent from places where human beings exist solely as entertainment for absolute power. Marcus glides past carrying a silver tray laden with delicacies that represent the Empire's vast reach. Dormice stuffed with honey and pine nuts, peacock tongues glazed with garum, wine aged in amphora buried beneath Vesuvius's fertile slopes. His movements have achieved the ghostly perfection demanded by months of brutal training, each step calibrated to create no sound that might disturb imperial conversations. The golden mask covering his features bears painted expressions of serene contentment, hiding whatever remains of the terrified child beneath layers of enforced beauty. The evening's entertainment celebrates a recent victory over Dacian tribes. Senators recline on couches inlaid with ivory and precious stones, their togas arranged in careful folds that display purple stripes indicating their rank in Rome's rigid hierarchy. They discuss taxation policies for newly conquered territories, while castrated servants weave between them like living shadows, anticipating needs before they are spoken and fulfilling desires that remain carefully unacknowledged in official records. The barbarian gold will finance expansion into Mesopotamia, declares Senator Fabius, gesturing with a goblet that Marcus refills without being asked. The boy's presence registers no more than furniture might. It's too useful, beautiful, but entirely beneath notice, unless malfunction requires attention. Trajan's vision extends beyond mere conquest toward permanent civilizing influence. You observe the grotesque ballet that unfolds throughout such gatherings. Eunuch servants perform choreographed movements designed to enhance aesthetic pleasure while remaining functionally invisible. They arrange themselves in living tableaus, human sculptures whose altered forms create pleasing compositions for sophisticated eyes. When guests require entertainment between courses, the boys dance to music played by their own transformed companions, their movements expressing passion they can never feel, strength they no longer possess, futures that surgical steel has permanently severed. The emperor watches from his elevated couch, his gray eyes tracking servant movements with the calculating interest of someone evaluating artistic performance rather than witnessing human degradation. Occasionally he gestures, and immediately a eunuch appears to adjust cushions or refresh wine, or simply stand within reach should sudden imperial whims require immediate satisfaction. These gestures carry absolute authority despite their casual nature, divine commands disguised as preferences. Quintus shows remarkable progress, observes Master Gaius during a brief lull in service, using Marcus's assigned Roman name with practiced ease. His musical abilities complement his physical modifications beautifully. The Syrian lyre suits his enhanced vocal qualities. You feel revulsion at the clinical language used to discuss surgical mutilation as aesthetic improvement. Yet this represents standard discourse in palace circles, where human modification is discussed with the same appreciation usually reserved